imagine that I was talking about what's in it for me. So when I say directional learning, I have a path which I could absolutely go from here to here or here to here. I am currently at this particular position, and I understand that based on the interest and based on the feed and based on the general discussion, I automatically become 75% ready for the job of this particular path. And now this is again basically one of the tools for directional learning, that I am automatically able to address where my interest level is, and that's where what is becoming the acceleration or igniting point of the learnings that I should be doing in order to be able to reach here. So that's again a very simple tool where we are looking at it in the perspective that I am thinking about feeds, which is social learning aspect of it. However, if the data is getting generated internally and I have a competency or a job framework for that matter, the tool is automatically able to tell me, and that is what drives me to the system which generates the good data. For us to be able to, as managers, for us to be able to decide on the competency assurance aspect of it. So this is one aspect of it in terms of how this particular framework, if at all operationalized in your respective organizations, how will it look like in terms of a final output for the learners, and why they would come back basically and use this from a system perspective. This is one slide which I think I have been talking about, which probably glues the conversation, where we are saying that learning, competency, performance and development is something which is very closely related. And if we are having siloed systems which is having independent data, I think it would not make sense at all in terms of an absolute HR transformation journey. So what I mean to say is that it is very easy that we can say that we have an integrated system, or we can actually get the data pumped from one system to another. But honestly speaking, in the current systems, I will never be able to do it. And if I have to generate data from two different systems and mash it together, that data will probably take me a couple of days, and that couple of days I will never have. So the simple feedback about this particular slide is that we could talk about that I've got a system, I will try to integrate it, but if you do not have these systems interrelated or so seamlessly integrated, even though they are separately developed, but the data points are so, it should be so intertwined that I should be able to get the final data which I am able to in order to be able to measure the final output. So I would basically again come back and say that we should never forget about final measurement output. Talking about time to perfection, profile assurance, I think these are the two simple aspects which in our organization sometimes basically we have or sometimes we miss, which basically I would emphasize that how much important it is making to the bottom line of our companies. Profile accreditation and certification process and profile self-assessment. Again, it could be very trivial assessment framework that we could have for anybody and everybody that joins at starter level or a mid-level or a senior level. But some kind of initial assessment in order to be able to see exactly how soon we are able to get the people productive will save a lot of money. Imagine a senior manager is hired and out of 12 months, from 3 months, we are able to accelerate the entire time to perfection to 2 months. It is a lot of saving. And that actually makes the business case to be able to justify to the board, why do I want to invest in a succession management or a self-assessment or an integrated automation process ready system to be able to do that. So these are some simple thoughts practically which all of us might know, but in the end we might not be able to convey it to the decision makers in order to be able to actually make it happen. This is again one view of it, because otherwise it gets very theoretical. I try to use some system screenshots so that actually you can look at it. So imagine if we are trying to do a self-assessment, it could be driven by the employee themselves, and after 3 months they fill in the information, and in the end they actually grade themselves from a competency perspective. So imagine these are the performance criteria, and finally after 3 months actually they rate themselves for the performance criteria which are mapped to the job for which they were hired, and then it is being graded by their respective managers. So then we are able to actually have a ready data after 1 year that how many people were hired and how long was the time to perfection, and what was the difference between similar people who were hired for a similar role, and which particular course or learning criteria makes that difference. And then we will be able to know that I am having this learning intervention missing in my learning framework, and I should be able to work on it, which is again the data which is the missing point, which probably is making our HR transformation exercise weaker. This was the topic which I was actually talking about, and I referred in this particular slide, which if you look at competency assurance, I will never be able to, I would say, personally do it unless I have a competency assurance, which I mentioned. However, if I have it, what difference can it make to my organization? I will be able to generate this kind of matrix where I, as a manager, have a KPI that I should do a, let's call it CGA, competency gap analysis, of 5 people. My KPI is, my manager says, Manu, it takes only 1 minute to do a CGA of 1 employee. So can't you spend 5 minutes to the 5 people who report to you in a month? I should have the right data where I've got this. I look at the employee, I click on this particular UI, and I am able to see what are the competencies, and I can just simply check what is the gap. And it automatically generates the learning, and it gets pumped to my learning system where it gets added. Now, practically what's happening is, I am generating this data time and again, where I did this CGA exercise on one single employee 4 times throughout an year, and I am able to actually see the learning curve, how it's happening. This is another aspect of learning, directional learning, which it is coming from the manager side rather than the employee side. So I was talking about employee sees what's in it for me. He sees the interest level. He sees from a learning graph perspective or a career path perspective that I've done this, so it gives me a catalyst, I will do that. At the same time, manager is pushing something, and that particular employee is taking it because manager is actually putting it out as an improvement criteria. So this is something which is basically coming from the manager, which I think the managers are the custodians for it, and they cannot be blaming HR for that. However, it is the duty of the HR from a framework perspective that they built this together. They are, I would say basically HR can only be an enabler in bringing the competency framework, but the drive probably can be coming from their side, which in the end basically together from a collaboration perspective can be firmed out. And then these kind of data basically can be captured. So if you look at it, what I can actually take out from this is, from a 6 monthly data, I can look at what is the most common learning gap and why that particular gap is happening. And I can straight away pinpoint and say, I do not have this particular learning in my organization, or this particular learning is scarce in this particular region. So let me probably develop a great learning instructional-led course to be able to fulfill this particular gap. Yeah. This is the first topic that I was talking about, which I actually put it to the end, which can make it a summary that if you look at it, training plan, training history, tools, not solutions, probably does not increase in employee productivity. So 90% of the employees of the companies basically, from an LMS perspective, it is just being used as a registering as a course and tracking learner history, which is not where we are in terms of directional learning. I think we are miles ahead of that. However, our organizations probably might be still using it in this particular process on an aspect. And 50% of these scores, if you look at it, actually this is something which is a very interesting statistics. Courses booked and tracked are not relevant for the learner. And what happens is, because of that, organization pays for an expensive LMS, spends on the course provider for course delivery, and lastly loses productive time of its employees who attended the course. So you could actually look at it from your team's perspective. If 5 people are reporting to you or 10 people are reporting to you, how many of them attended such kind of courses which did not make sense for their respective jobs? And can you imagine the kind of money that is being wasted? We're only looking at $5,000 for a course, but imagine the kind of time that the employee invested in taking that particular course, which is part of the salary component of that particular employee. And look at it from a perspective, what is the investment that the companies are making. And so it's very simple actually that before selecting a LMS system, before letting the employees choose a learning, we should be able to decide how and when, which type of learning is going to be cascaded to the employee and how it is going to be measured by the manager. So we are actually again coming back to this. I'm talking to you like a teacher, but I feel basically that I can give the message across, which I feel probably will be very precious for I would say basically in your respective L&D departments, and if it could make probably a little bit of difference, I think my 45-minute session would be a little useful.